Movie footage used in the kill count is owned entirely by the copyright holders. Dead Meat makes no claim of ownership and simply uses the footage for purposes of education, commentary, and criticism under fair use. Please support filmmakers and the art of filmmaking by watching Saw 5 in its entirety on home media or streaming services where available. Welcome to the Kill Count, where we tally up the victims in all our favorite horror movies. I'm James A. Janice, and today we're looking at Saw 5, released in 2008. Saw 5 is the directorial debut of David Hackle, who served as the production designer of the previous 3 Saw films, so, you know, nice little promotion for that dude. With all your faves like Eric Matthews and Daniel Rigg dead, Saw 5 leaves us with Detective Mark Hoffman, the undercover jigsaw apprentice, now trying to tidy up all the loose ends left over so he can live free and saw hard. How many kills will Hoffman rack up in his first solo flight as our killer? Let's find out and get to them. The movie begins on a dark and stormy night where this tatted up dude Seth Baxter wakes up chained to a workbench. Billy appears on a TV and is all puppet pissed about the amount of time Seth served for killing someone.
You served 5 years of what should have been a life sentence for murder.
Then he puppet explains Seth's present situation. There's a big blade above him that's about to be slowly lowered down. In 30 seconds, it'll start cutting into him, and in 60, it'll finish the job. The only way Seth can stop the blade is to hold his hands inside the vices beside him until they get crushed to a bloody pulp. The blade starts swinging, and it is instantly one of the scariest traps we've ever seen. Just the sound of this thing would make me poop my pants. Seth's underwear may or may not be soiled, but he is scared enough to follow the rules and put both his hands into those vices, crushing them like red pepper. After that excruciating experience is over, the vices let go, but the blade keeps on a-coming. As the blade cuts into Seth, he looks over to see the eye of someone watching him from behind a screen. His last words are of quiet indignation.
Is it what I'm supposed to do?
The pendulum blade lowers all the way to kill him, and the clamps around his neck release to allow a final dramatic death gasp. That was a solid meal of gore for our opening kill of the movie. Better cleanse our palates with a title card. Since the Saw series is now a full-fledged TV show at this point, Saw 5 starts with what's essentially a previously on Saw, showing Strahm getting locked inside that makeshift operating room by an unseen Detective Hoffman. He finds another way out, but in no time at all, he's getting ambushed by a pig head and knocked out with delicious drugs. He wakes up in a crazy cool shot that's kind of like the one from the beginning of Resident Evil, and it turns out he's had his head placed inside a glass box, the better to see his tears through. Attached to the box is a couple of jugs of water, but Strahm's not at the water cooler to chat about the latest Game of Thrones. He's there to fucking drown, because those jugs start filling that box. He winds up looking like a Haunted Mansion ghost before he gets a genius and totally badass idea. He takes a pen from his pocket and gives himself a tracheotomy, stabbing a passage to his airway and allowing himself to breathe through this neck hole. Nice work, Strahm. You just proved yourself worthy of being this movie's main character. The cavalry arrives at Gideon Meatpacking, and we finally get closure to Saw 3's cliffhanger ending about Jeff and Lynn's daughter Corbett, when we see Hoffman carrying her outside to safety. Hoffman tells another detective that nobody else made it, but don't speak too soon there, Mark.
We got a live one!
Yeah, you do, and Strahm's survival straight up stole Hoffman's spotlight. Hoffman's face dissolves into a Jigsaw magazine cover in a not so subtle transition to a scene with John Kramer's ex-wife Jill Tuck. She's meeting with a lawyer who tells her that John bequeathed her a tape. In it, he tells Jill that there are certain rules to the 5th film of a horror franchise. Oh shit, sorry, wrong series. He actually tells her he's left her a box with stuff that's super important inside, and that she'll know what to do with them. When presented with the box, Jill takes a random key from around her neck and opens it, but get this shit, we don't see what's inside, and we literally won't until the next movie. Listen, Saw, I love the soap opera shit, but you can't just give half a hint of something and not revisit it until the sequel. That's not how movies work. The nondescript police force of the Saw series is celebrating that their supervillain is finally dead. Hoffman gets a nice juicy promotion, and the fallen officers of all these movies get their Sears portraits put on display, so everything worked out in the end, until Hoffman finds an envelope on his desk with a note inside alluding to his secret identity as Jigsaw Jr. This note shit is gonna get a little confusing later, but just remember that Hoffman found this note right now, in the present, after he got his promotion and Jigsaw's death and everything. Assuming the note came from Strahm, Hoffman immediately sets out to take revenge, going to the evidence room and stealing Strahm's cell phone. Then he's called to Agent Perez's old hospital room that the cleaning ladies must have missed on the last shift. Strahm is pissed about Perez being gone, and in his new raspy voice, he pointedly asks Hoffman how he walked out of that building alive. Hoffman responds like a 4th grader.
How did you?
On a gurney with a fucking hole in my throat.
Oh, he's got you there, Hoffy. After Hoffman leaves, a new character, murder, Special Agent Erickson of the FBI shows up to talk to Strom. He's easy to identify because he's got a Bluetooth in his ear, so thanks for that, writers. He's there to tell Strom that he's off the case, then leaves him alone in the hospital room looking like a sad divorced dad in his frumpy hospital bathrobe. You know, this is all fine and great, but we needs us a trap plot, and Hoffman begins it by unveiling a real neat shoebox diorama and a rack of monitors showing a series of rooms. I'm glad Jigsaw and his apprentices never advanced beyond a third-grade science fair presentation style of their traps. The trap plot begins with 5 people waking up to find their necks ensnared by a cable that runs back towards a very head-choppy style blade. What's great is that by this point in the series, even these randos knows who's behind their predicament.
Jigsaw.
This lady Britt points out that, wait a minute, Jigsaw's dead. But before they can make sense of anything, Billy appears on a TV to welcome them all to his playground. He tells them they've got shit for morals and are selfish as fuck. But today,
This singular way of thinking will be put to the test. Today, 5 will become 1 with a common goal of survival.
presently, they're all connected to each other with those cables around their necks. And they're gonna get a little too much off the top if they don't free themselves with the keys across the room. But the cable connecting all of them only has enough slack for one person to reach a key box at a time. And they've only got 60 seconds for all of them to get free, starting from whenever one of them goes for a key.
Your lifelong instincts will tell you to do one thing, but I implore you to do the opposite.
There's also a 15-minute timer connected to some nail bombs that'll go off and kill them if they're not out of the room by then. You know, just for extra motivation. What's great about this trap plot is that rather than start fucking up immediately, these people all play it cool and try to figure out the riddle of why they're there and what connects them to each other. You know, besides the death cable around their necks. But eventually, drug addict Malik gets properly instigated by mysterious Charles in his cool-ass voice.
It's a game, tweaker.
Malik makes a selfish run for a key and it sets off the timer. Charles uses his strength to stop Malik and then retrieve his key first. Then he steps back to give the cable some slack so these ladies Luba and Britt can take individual turns getting their own keys. But Malik and this Ashley chick can't seem to work together, and although Malik is able to retrieve his key and join the others in safety, the timer runs out on Ashley and she's pulled back into the razor, giving her a cartoony decapitation. The effects on the corpse after the fact are just fine, but that kill's gotta have the worst effects we've seen in the series so far. The door opens and they move on, but not before Britt collects all the keys in the room.
What are you doing?
Being smart.
Cop plot time, where Strom is sneaking into work to collect some unapproved overtime. He looks up Hoffman's records and finds out that Seth Baxter, the dude killed by the pendulum blade in the beginning, had actually murdered his wife, who it turns out was Hoffman's sister, as this unevenly exposed funeral picture reveals. Crazy stuff, and let's just click through some more plot stuff here for good measure. Great. Yeah, get a close-up on that plot stuff, sure. On his way out, Strom is stopped by Erickson, but he plays it off by saying he's just collecting his things before taking time off, or, you know, throat stuff. Strom goes back to the scene of Seth Baxter's murder and inspects everything there, including the tortured glory hole. Glory hole? A flashback shows it was Hoffman's eye behind it in the opening kill, and that he cut out a fleshy jigsaw piece in an imitation of the real deal. As the detective on the case, Hoffman admitted that he knew the victim as the man who murdered his sister, but I guess that didn't raise any red flags at the time. In the present, Strom just kind of intuits this all on his own.
You killed him. Made it look like a jigsaw trap. I got you.
In the next room, the trap plot folks suss out their stories. That headless chick Ashley was a fire inspector, Luba is a corrupt city planner, Britt is a VP of a real estate company, and Malik is a trust fund drug addict. Charles already knew all of this because he's an investigative journalist. Billy howdy-doos his way into the story to tell them that the 4 safety chambers they see will protect them from this room's bomb when it goes off. But there are only 3 keys hidden in the glass jars hanging above their heads. They've only got a minute, so Charles incapacitates Malik, citing survival of the fittest, and starts breaking these jars open like he's a gold star pinata busting champion. But after he takes a key from Malik's hand, he becomes the pinata himself.
Survival of the fittest, my ass!
Britt, Luba, and Malik are able to get to safety inside the chambers, right as the timer reaches 0, and Charles gets killed in the ensuing explosion. Consider it luck, Chuck. You probably had the quickest death in this entire franchise. And yet, it's still got some nice gore to it. Back to a cop plot flashback. After Hoffman investigated Seth Baxter's case, he found an envelope in his desk with a note just like the one we saw him find earlier in the movie. But remember, this is a flashback, meaning that this note came first chronologically, and while Hoffman suspects that Strom wrote the other note we saw him receive, this one must have been written by John Kramer, who's waiting for Hoffman in an elevator at his apartment building. We're witnessing the first time these two met, and as with many first-time Jigsaw meetups, it involves a needle in the neck and getting knocked the fuck out. Hoffman wakes up in Jigsaw's starter workshop that we saw in the last movie, and John says he knows all about Hoffman and his sister's murder. Since we see it in a flashback, I'll put it on the count. And yes, I should have done the same with Jeff and Lynn's son Dylan in Saw 3. My bad for not including it. Although John sympathizes with Hoffman's familial loss and his desire for justice, he can't condone what Hoffman did to Seth.
Unlike you, I've never killed anyone.
Killing is distasteful.
It never ends with this guy. But he really truly believes his ideology, which is what makes Jigsaw so damn interesting.
There is a better, more efficient way.
Seems like he's willing to recruit Hoffman into his effort to crack down on recidivism, but only after he psychologically tortures him by making him pull the trigger of a shotgun pointed at his head.
Fuck you. Fuck you.
He's all like, see, the shit I do will instantly rehabilitate anyone. And then he introduces himself to Hoffman as the man they call Jigsaw. Yeah, John, Hoffman was probably able to detect that one out by now. Hoffman's given a choice: arrest John and have the beans spilled on his Seth Baxter murder, or become a student of Jigsaw.
Or I could kill you right now.
But you're not a true killer.
But you just said... Whatever, John. You know what happens in the end. Jigsaw gets Darth Hoffman as an apprentice. In the present, Hoffman calls up Bluetooth Erickson and casts some shade on Strom, hinting in all sorts of ways that he could be the Jigsaw accomplice they've been looking for. Erickson grows more receptive to the propaganda when he finds the Jigsaw files missing from the office and figures out Strom must have stolen them. Meanwhile, Strom is just taking a waltz down Saw memory lane, checking out this still unclean scene of the first movie's razor wire Saw trap, which was the trap that gave us our first ever on-screen Saw victim. We see a flashback in which the victim Paul gets attacked by a pair of pigheads. During a fight with Biker Pighead, Paul gets stabbed with a needle by Red Robe Pighead, who is John Kramer rocking a bomb-ass bald head and a slick goatee. No wonder Hoffman's on board. This flashback is one of those where we watch old stuff played out more in depth, but it's done in a cool style, and like I said before, seeing the fuller picture of the storyline always feels kinda neat. Also, turns out that Hoffman had warned Jigsaw of Detective Tapp closing in on him, so Jigsaw planted Dr. Gordon's penlight on the scene and had Hoffman lead Tapp to Gordon as a suspect. Further flashbacks show Hoffman helping John set up the nerve gas house party and complaining about Amanda's outsized role in that affair. Because remember, now we know that Hoffman was Jigsaw's apprentice before Amanda Young came on the scene. The remaining trap plot trio gets into their next room where there's a scrub-a-dub tub in the middle. Bath Time Billy shows up to tell them that in order to open the 5 locks on the door to the next room, the 5 circuits powering them must be closed by connecting the 5 cords to the bathwater.
Who will bridge the gap? The choice is yours.
The 3-minute timer starts and Luba takes over the pinata whacking role by knocking Malik into the tub so she can attach the cables to him and get the hell out of there. But Britt has a different plan and kills Luba with a single stab to the neck. I was kinda surprised by how easily Luba died here, but I guess they needed her dead fast so Britt and Malik could easily prep her corpse for tubby time. They put her in the water and attach each of the 5 electrical cables to her body. The final attachment is an undercutting head stab, and with that, the door to the next room opens and the trap plot twosome escapes another round of nail bombs. Bluetooth Erickson gets a visit from Jill Tuck, last seen with her bequeathment box, and she tells him that she thinks Agent Strom is following her, raising his suspicions even further. But right now, all Strom's doing is continuing to visit old Saw sets and trigger more flashbacks. During the Saw 3 era, after Hoffman complained that Jigsaw was giving Amanda too many chances, John was like, "Shut up and do my work, henchman, Hoffman," and gave him a file folder with pictures of the Fatal 5, meaning John was behind this movie's trap plot, no big surprise. Then apparently, Hoffman disappeared through that hidden wall door mere seconds before Lynn and Amanda rolled in to kick off the meat of Saw 3. Strom has a revelation.
We were all supposed to die.
And he's right. Hoffman had a plan that was supposed to kill off all these contingency characters and leave him the sole survivor and the hero of Generic City. And why, that just makes Strom all sorts of displeased. He'd be even more pissed if he witnessed this fuckery going on, with Hoffman calling Erickson from Strom's cell phone and not talking when Erickson answers. Rude. When Erickson goes to call him back, Hoffman powers down Strom's cell to make him look extra shady. The simple plan works, and Erickson orders a locator on Strom's phone. Hoffman returns to Trap Plot Central and plants Strom's cell phone at the console, so when the locator finally, locates it, it's that torture headquarters that Erickson rushes off to. The Trap Plot folk are in a room with a contraption that don't need no Billy tutorial. There's a beaker and some buzzsaws, and they'll have to fill the beaker with blood to open the next door. At first, they assume they'll have to fight to the death to see who lives, but then they realize they could have all survived these traps by working together. Yeah, no shit, you idiots, but just in case you, the viewer, wants to know how they were supposed to pass each room specifically, here you go. Britt sees that the keys from the first room were all the same, meaning after one person retrieved their key, they all could have used the same key to free themselves. The bathroom trap would have worked with all of them getting a survivable shock instead of one person frying like Luba did. And in that second room, those safety chambers could have fit more than one person, which I thought was pretty damn obvious, but I guess the whole thing with these characters is that their instincts are selfish, so it makes sense that they missed it. They're not good people. Billy pops up to confirm everything they've already figured out, and while prepping for the joint blood sacrifice, Malik reveals that he's probably there because he accidentally killed 8 people when he burned down a building in exchange for some heroin. He didn't know that those people were in the building when he burned it down, but apparently Britt did. Turns out she set that plan in motion by paying a drug dealer to hire Malik for the arson, since she needed the land for real estate stuff. The others, Fire Inspector Ashley, Reporter Charles, and City Planner Luba, had all helped cover it up somehow, keeping everyone out of jail.
You're a monster!
So are you.
We both deserve to be here.
Aw, torture traps, bringing people together since, well, actually, this is kind of the first time they've been successful in that regard, isn't it? Hoffman arrives at what looks to be his home, and Strom is right there behind him. Strom just walks right through the door to stalk Hoffman through the house, and hey, is it just me or does this place look kind of familiar? Like that trap door in the ground and those tunnels? Yep, turns out this is the nerve gas house. And apparently Hoffman remodeled it to be a home. It's kind of far-fetched, I know. But look, while Strom's looking around the infamous tunnels, he even sees the door to the shit room. He doesn't opt to enter it, instead pressing on to find a room with that glass coffin we saw John making in a flashback in Saw 4. Inside is a tape player, and when Strom plays it, he hears Hoffman's voice instead of John Kramer's.
Hello, Agent Strom.
It tells him good job on the detective work, but lay the fuck off now, man. It also says the only way safely out of this room is inside that box full of glass shards. But Hoffman himself is lurking just outside that room, and when he makes a noise, Strom stops the tape to hear what's up. Meanwhile, Malik and Britt stand side by side as they prepare to sacrifice any future hand grip strain. In the goriest scene of the movie, their hands are buzzsawed apart to fill the beaker with blood. It's a pretty intense scene, but at least they have each other to lean on as they make their sacrifice. When the beaker has its fill, the door unlocks, so it looks like Britt and Malik have made it. Yeah, I love a real happy feel-good ending. Later, Erickson arrives at the building, having followed the phone tracker, and when he walks into the torture trap command center, he finds Britt barely alive on the ground. She woozily tells him that they won, and he calls for immediate medical assistance. So yeah, she and Malik actually succeeded and survived. While waiting for the medics to arrive, Erickson takes a look around and finds Hoffman's planted evidence setting up Strom, including a cell phone on the table and the file Strom took from the station. Erickson also finds a folder with some headshots of Matt Walsh in it. Oh shit, no, those are pictures of Erickson. So now he thinks that Strom was targeting him next. He calls in an APB on Strom, meaning Hoffman's gambit has succeeded. Speaking of Hoffman, he enters the room with the glass coffin only to find it empty, meaning Strom didn't follow the instructions on his tape. Instead, Strom attacks Hoffman from behind, and after a short bout, knocks him into the glass coffin and closes the lid, locking him inside.
I got you, you motherfucker.
Ah, but did you, Strom? Because the door slams shut behind him, locking him in this room, and Hoffman, though trapped in the glass coffin, is looking pretty smug. The reason is revealed when Strom listens to the rest of his tape.
However, if you choose not to, you will never be heard from again. Your body will never be found. You will simply vanish.
As the glass coffin begins to descend, the tape explains that Strom should have stopped pressing forward, but since he didn't, now everyone's gonna think he was the Jigsaw apprentice, leaving Hoffman the hero as originally planned. The glass coffin becomes a safe little lockbox when it finishes sinking into the ground, and Strom is left in a room that must be going on a crash diet, because it is getting small fast. The walls close in on him until he's nothing more than a red-tinted rainstorm falling against the glass lid of Hoffman's safety chamber, and that's the way the movie ends, with the defeat of Special Agent Strom. Hoffman's first big trap left 2 people living, but how many people did Saw 5 leave dead? Let's find out and get to the numbers. By flying. Bye. In a series low, tied with the first movie, only 6 people died in Saw 5. The victims consisted of 3 men and 3 women, giving us an even 50-50 split, and with a runtime of 95 minutes, we got a kill on average every 15.83 minutes. I'll give the golden chainsaw for coolest kill to Agent Strom, who really could have used a pair of droids to shut down all the garbage smashers on the detention level. Dull machete for lamest kill will go to Ashley, because I hate how fake her decapitation looks. For shame, Saw 5. The platinum punji sticks for coolest trap will go to the necktie trap, also known as the collar. I love the tension, pun intended, of each person having to give and take so they can all escape, and the reveal that one key would have freed them all is an excellent way to illustrate how selfish these people's instincts were. Rusty Mousetrap for lamest trap will go to the shotgun chair that Jigsaw put Hoffman in. What, his test was to be willing to pull the trigger on himself? Also, I don't know guns, but I've read that with the way that cartridge is shown to have been loaded afterward, Hoffman should have actually had his head blown off. I'm giving every Untitled Saw sequel a personalized subtitle to help it stand out. This week I give you Saw 5, The Hoffman Cometh. And that's it! Saw 5 came out in 2008, and although it opened in second place thanks to High School Musical 3, it did make enough money to justify Saw 6, which I'll be covering next Friday, YouTube willing. Until then, I'm James A. Janice. This has been The Kill Count. Thanks a lot for watching this week's Kill Count. I want to thank a couple of patrons like Macy O'Banion and Marisa Sanchez. I really appreciate all of you being understanding about all the stuff I'm facing with the Saw Kill Count. Sometimes I over-tweet about it, but it's just because this is my job and my life and I'm so passionate about it. Feel free to keep me in check and be like, alright dude, we got it. Despite all the hard work, I've been having a blast making this series. Alright y'all, be good people.